action.
Hi, thank you so much for listening today to us. This is Balaji and I'm Sophie. Did you know what goes into your chicken meat? If you go down to Tesco, you'll be surprised to know that the meat that goes into the chicken isn't actually meat. What they do is that they use leftovers, they explode it, glue it together, and then press them out so that they use like chicken. Another problem is the aging of strawberries in your strawberry yogurt. Did you know that those are up to 5 or 10 years old? These are some of the problems we're facing in the food industry today. And the reason that we're finding this is in defining the linkages in the industry. Back in the days, you just had the farmers or the manufacturer that sold directly to the consumer. But increasingly, when industrialization came, and also as we're becoming a more global society, all these linkages had to be added in order to connect the consumer to the farming. We also have the broker, and the broker then trades all these individual products with each of the parties without taking an owner's stake. With technology, we're seeing that online market is really increasing, not only supporting retailers, but also allowing farmers and manufacturers to have an increasingly larger voice. So what are the main issues today? What we found is that oil price, food waste, obesity, consumer behavior, genetically modified organisms, and natural disasters are some of the main problems we're seeing. And Balaji will tell you more about this.
Thank you, Sophie. The prices of oil almost plays a major role in determining the price of any product being produced. And the food products are not an exception to it because we use oil for all the stages of food production, be it manufacturing, processing, or distribution. And when the price of oil increases, it results in increased food price too. So the prices of oil can also be determined by the amount of alternatives available in the industry, in this case being biofuels. When there's an increase in the production of biofuels, the price of oil comes down and it should result in the decreased prices of food. But it is not the case because the increase in production of biofuel is achieved by the increasing number of farmers turning to the cultivation of crop for field production rather than cultivating food for consumption. And this gives less number of hectares for the production of staple food like wheat, and when the prices of staple food increase, the prices of all the food commodities increase as well. And this graph, the graph shows the price of oil, which has been fluctuating for the past 10 years, and the red one indicates the prices of food, which is almost a replication of the price of oil. And the other important challenge for the retail industry would be the amount of food that is being wasted. It's almost surprising to know that 1/3 of the food being produced in the world as of now is being wasted. It can be attributed to two main reasons. The first being all the food that is produced is not being sold simply because of reasons like it's not appealing to the consumers in terms of perfect size, shape, or texture. And the second reason being overconsumption, where people tend to buy more of a product for a lesser price and then end up not being able to consume all the products before the product expires and the food gets wasted. This creates food shortage and results in increased food prices as well. Yes. Consumer behavior. Consumer behavior is the most challenging part for any retail industry, and this we believe is the most challenging because it keeps changing and it never remains at a constant level. And the recent trends show that the increase in consumption of organic food and the gluten-free food are a result of various world governments trying to impart health education into people to cut down on obesity, which also leads to potential diseases like diabetes and heart diseases. And there is also an increase in number of people moving to local producers and local retailers due to lack of transparency in the food being sold by supermarkets. And there's also a surprising increase in the amount of frozen food and fast food being consumed because of lifestyle changes where people tend to work for longer hours and simply cannot afford the time to cook food and eat. Due to increasing population, we face less number of land available for cultivation, and the available land is also, the soil keeps turning less fertile day by day, and their technology comes into play to aid agriculture in the form of genetic engineering, where crops are being engineered to either increase the yield or to increase the nutritional value or to make the crops to be more sustainable in a hostile environment. It is surprising to know that more than 80% of corn being produced in the US is genetically modified, and more than 90% of soybeans produced in the US is genetically modified. People are totally fine when they have genetically modified food, which are cash crops, but they are not totally acceptable when it comes for genetic engineering for the foods we consume. So this has lots of ethical issues behind it, and there's clearly not acceptance by all the countries throughout the world for genetic engineering. You can see in the graph there are lots of countries in the world which are totally against genetically engineered foods, and majority of North America, South America, and parts of Asia are like partially accepting genetically engineered foods. And the increase in food prices is also a result of natural disasters, global warming being the most concernable, and because the temperature of the earth keeps increasing day by day, and the best known farming lands are known to be moving from equator to the northern parts and the southern parts, thus reducing the yield produced by farming. And the global warming also results in erratic monsoon patterns, which results in either early onset of monsoons or receiving less than average rainfall, and which makes it completely difficult for countries which are totally dependent on groundwater for farming. And other natural disasters such as tsunamis and earthquakes and dust in certain part of the globe also create local demand and thus push the food prices high. And Sophie would now talk about the recent trends.
Yeah, so basically, if we were to talk about how does these trends start, we're seeing that the most interesting aspect are the development coming from US. Whatever happens in the US is actually affecting and being adopted in Asia and Africa. One of these examples is that you have the aerobics trend from the 80s. And this meant that people suddenly, they didn't want to have any fat, and all this energy had then to be substituted by sugar, because it's either fat or sugar, the only thing that our brain can consume. So looking into that, we also saw that there is a 40% decrease since 20 years in grocery shopping, whereas before we had a whole market grocery shopping of 90%, it's only 50 today. This is a massive change, and 63% of all the food consumed today is packaged and processed food. 6% of this is organic foods, and 15% is only fresh food, leaving the rest to frozen goods, which are usually also processed foods. 45% of the organics market come from the US, so it's really astounding to see that only 6% of the market in the US is organic. We looked into the industry, and focusing on the US, we saw that Walmart, Costco, and Kroger, and Target are actually the 4 main out of 10 world-leading consumer retailers in the world. What we saw is, looking to the strategy to understand what's happening, is Walmart being the biggest of several hundred billion in revenue each year. They have a strategy of low cost, and this is then achieved due to economies of scale. The second largest is Kroger. Their strategy is diversification, and they focus only on groceries, whereas Walmart has also other products. Costco is bulk buying items. You are a member, and you can buy it B2C or B2B. And Target has the same strategy as Walmart, but Target is more upscale products. Looking into what's going to happen in the future. Well, of course we can't predict it, but we're seeing an increase in online market. We're seeing this being a driving trend, particularly because consumers are demanding more transparency, and they want to have a shorter linkage to the farmers. This means that farmers and manufacturers, they can create their own online store and allow consumers to purchase through them instead. This is a huge threat to retailers, but retailers are also reaping all the opportunities from this. When we look into fashion, you'll see that every time a fashion trend changes, that will also change the food trend. So the change in what we eat can be quite rapid, however the weight will take longer time to reach on the other side of the globe. We have this big versus small retailers, and also leading to people to self-produce, such as seeing the bee farms on top of rooftops in New York. This is also preserving the organisms that produce our products. We think that industry should partner up with organizations that are consumer-driven in order to create this goodwill that they've lost. For example, in the case of Tesco, where you have horse meat that was treated by hormones instead of actually having genuine cow's meat. Technology is a main driver as well. We're seeing in India that the rice, which is the main source of nutrients in the country, is being polished so that all the crops outside of vanilla protein is actually being removed, because it's the main reason for the 40% diabetes that the population have. They're not even overweight, it's just malnutrition. And then GMO, but this has a lot of contradiction linked to it. We hope you liked this presentation, and this has given you an insight to how the food retail industry looks today. Please write below or comment if you have any questions about this presentation. Thank you.